Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are here with Sherry Shu again from University of Manchester, and also a great friend and consultant to Cambridge Finance. Thank you so much, Sherry. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. And today we're going to talk about how AI can speed up underwriting. I think this is a topic that everybody is interested in. And because we do have a lot of work that goes into the underwriting, because at the end of the day, what we are buying is pretty much um, the the byproduct of our underwriting process. So if we can speed up the underwriting process, and then if we can make decisions more quickly and more robustly, I think that's a great win for us as an industry. So thank you very much. Over to you, and I'll disappear.
All right, thank you, Maria. And hello, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen so that everyone can see the slides, I hope. Mm, yeah, I believe so. So thank you for all for joining. I'm Sherry Yishuang Xu from University of Manchester. And I think in the next 30 minutes or so, that's spend it on something that has moved very fast in the past 18 or 24 months, how AI is changing our workflow, specifically today for underwriting. So if you read the headlines, you'd think that AI is about to replace all the underwriters, but the reality on the ground is more interesting, honestly, um, more useful than that, because nowadays everyone is trying to use AI, and they, especially for example, some tools like OpenClaw, but in the end they found that it seems like they go through all the hassles, but it didn't get any help from AI really. So let's see how AI is going to help us to speed up the underwriting. So here's what we are going. I'll start with the definition of the AI-driven underwriting that I think is more useful than the one that you'll find from the brochures of different tools, or the demo videos of other tools. And then we'll look at three technical layers of underneath, because if you can't tell the rules from the machine learning from to generative AI, which are the chatbot, it's very hard to have a very sensible procurement conversation. And the middle and the largest part of the session walks through the whole four stages of underwriting workflow where AI is genuinely speeding things up today. And then maybe a short and important section on governance. We can have a look at the guardrails that need in place. And then we'll finish with a quick future outlook and a practical takeaway that you can act on it or try it on from this week. So let's just get into it. Let me just start with what I think is the single most useful reframing for this whole topic. So AI underwriting is augmentation, not replacement. Let me show you what I mean on this. So on the left-hand side here is what it is. In 2026, this year, a good AI underwriting system is an assistant. It can read things, it can sort things out, it can pre-score submissions. It takes hours of boring manual data work and compresses them into minutes. So it applies the same rules the same way every time, which is a form of the consistency that humans generally struggle with. And it drafts your rationales, your exclusions, your follow-up questions. It flags the things that you need to look at or look a little bit strange. So human beings like us can take a closer look. All of these things are real and available today. It's not for the future, it's now, it's present. And on the right-hand side, what isn't? It is not a blind without a human in the loop button. It's not like you press the button and you got the report. Well, you can do that, of course, but the report is not really useful. So it is not a black box that you point the submissions and trust blindly. It is not a replacement for the underwriting judgment on the edge cases. And the edge cases are where the money is made or lost. And it inherits the bias of the data it was trained on. So every single data entry, it might bring some bias to the system or to the model. So it is not a finished or completed product. All these models, no matter which tool you are using, need some monitoring and retraining. And the same, it's more like the some servicing or maintaining all the time. So the single biggest mistake I saw some originations make is buying AI underwriting tools as if they are buying the full automation, but they are not actually. What you're really buying is a very fast, some assistant who doesn't take day off, let's say, who's brilliant at borrowing 70% of the work. But that's actually more valuable than a system that tries to do 100% of the work, because 100% of work done by the AI doesn't exist yet. So if your underwriter are afraid are efficient. And now let's see the blumping part. This is the single most useful technical framing I can give you at the moment. So every AI underwriting product on the market right now is some combination of the three layers. So the sellers cannot tell you which layer that they are selling is a seller that you can't really trust, or you need to be a bit cautious about. So the layer one is a rule-based automation. So not really AI, strictly speaking, but it's where the most teams should start. So it's kind of a little bit determined or deterministic. So if X and Y, and then say, so that is quite similar to what we are doing at work. It's auditable, so you can show the regulators exactly why any decision was made. And it's a bit boring, of course, in every good way. A rule that says if a loan to value ratio is over, for example, 75%, and the built year is before 1900, the route to senior underwriter. So that is fixed. That cannot be changed. Of course, human beings can make judgments on that or adjustment on that, but it's kind of the thing that should have been automated, um, maybe even 10 years ago with or without AI. It can be just written in the programs and in the system. And layer two here is what developed in the recent decades. It's a machine learning model. This is where we get the real lift on the change and the pricing. So all these models look at thousands of historical submissions and find a pattern that a human being maybe struggle to notice or even can't see. The things like the combination of the occupancy rate, the roof age, or maybe the postcode tend to produce losses 15% above the book average, or some kind of machine learning model, which is called a gradient boosted model. That is a standard technique. It suggests a risk band, and your underwriter confirms or maybe overrides it. So notice the language here in this second layer. It suggests, it confirms, it overrides. So the model is not deciding anything. So it all produces or provides the materials or the lines, the governance lines that we can come back to later. And then it comes to the final layer, that which maybe all of us are quite familiar with, is a generative and agentic AI. So this is a new layer after 2023, I remember, after ChatGPT was, on the market. This is what raised broker's email, open attachment, extract some schedules of the value, fills in the the workbench, and draft some codes rationale. So 2 years ago, all these stuffs was a demo rather than the production. But today, for the structured parts of the job. It is production grade and not perfect yet, but quite useful every day. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the recent very popular tool, agentic AI called OpenClaw. So it can actually be the agent for a human being, be the AI agent for the human beings. So it's more like the quick show of the hands in the chat if you can. And um, actually, it free our time significantly and see how can we speed up the workflow with that. So the reason of all these three layering matters is that each layer needs different things from ourselves, from human beings. The rules need good policy documentation, and the machine learning needs clean historical data. Remember what I said before, it's just each data entry bring bias to the model. And the generative AI or agentic AI needs some guardrails or human reviews for what they're doing. And different investment, different timelines. A seller might want to sell you all the three in one box as a tool. Of course, it's very user-friendly. But we, as human beings, as a professional, need to know how they are structured and need to know whether or not they are useful for workflow. And this is the spine in this slides, show you the spine of the talk. So most underwriting workflow, whether you are in the commercial property or insurance or small, medium enterprise lending, it looks like a version of this, more or less. We can categorize them into these four stages. So a submission comes in, the data gets aggregated and enriched, and the risk assessment happens, a decision and a code go back out. So that is how we are doing our work usually. So AI doesn't replace any of these stages. They actually just compresses them, and the compression isn't evenly distributed. That matters. So the biggest gain by a distance are in stage 1 here and 2. The smallest gain are in, I think, stage 3, because that's where human judgment is most important. Even though you are given so many recommendations or suggestions, still, I think human beings' judgment is very important at this stage. And stage 4 here, more like the outcome, like sits in the middle, I believe. So some numbers, directionally, teams I've seen to do this very well report time to code dropping by 50% on a simple standard risk, and throughout per underwriters roughly doubling at their work. So all those numbers, of course, vary widely, though we'll come back to this and to see why that is at the end. So for the next 4 slides, I'll take each stage in turn, and for each one, I'll tell you what AI is doing and what human beings are still needed. So here is stage 1, the intake and the triage. Honestly, if you do nothing else from this webinar, just go look at this stage. It's the highest return use case for the AI in underwriting today, I believe. First of course, the job itself is a little bit time consuming and boring. And more importantly, if you ask your underwriters how much their days goes to the intake admin, for example, reading different emails, documentations, opening different PDF files, retyping the field into the system, and chasing all the missing informations, try to confirm them. And most of them will tell you that 30, maybe to even to 50% of their time are spending on this. And that's the work actually AI is the best at, and it's the work your underwriter most want to give up or get away from. So it is no one in your organization whose career ambitions is to retype some, for example, brokers' data into the the system. So what the AI does at this stage, concretely, it reads email. If you give it the right, it opens every attachment, including the oddly formatted one. So it pulls out the structured field named insured occupancy or limit or total insured value, etc. So all the indicators, all the data you need, it drops those into your system at work with a confidence score attached. So it checks what comes in against your appetite, and is this the kind of risk we want to write at all? And it drops the follow-up email as well to the broker when something is missing. So what stay humans would be the question. Okay, three things, I believe. First, the appetite rule and the exceptions. So that's a policy job, not a model job. So the models cannot do that. And secondly, any extraction the model isn't confident about. So we might have those input that the model is not sure about. And here is what the human beings need to step in and have a look at with our eyes. And you set threshold, and anything below it gets humans' eyeballs before it touches the system. And thirdly, a broker's relationship. So that is definitely something that AI cannot replace yet. The tone of a follow-up email matters, and you actually know the broker better than the model. So let the AI draft the content, and again, the human beings need to have a look at it and then send it. Two practical tips if you are starting here. So first of all, don't try to use AI for risk selection in the first try, in the first go. Use it for the opposite, filtering out the things that you definitely do not want to write. And it's a safer starting point. And secondly, measure the time to acknowledge before you start. So you can prove the gains later. You can know how much time you actually saved from using AI. And stage two is data aggregation and enrichment. This is where the time saving really compounds because data you need is already out there in the system and it's just spread across maybe 10 different systems and with 10 different APIs, 10 different quality of the data levels. So the AI doesn't make the data better, but it gives you the consistent system to work on. So it just stitches them together to make them consistent. So it calls all your third-party sources in parallel. For example, the credit, the property data, public record, and sanctions, hazard database, planning permissions, etc. It reconciles them together across different sources critically, and it surfaces the conflict rather than silently picking one. So it can actually geocode locations, overlays the hazard data, and then we know the flood zones, the wildfire risk, substance. It also pulls out your historical loss data, the benchmark this risk against in the past. So it returns with a clean, structured submission file that your underwriter can actually work with. So at stage, which we said it will have the maximum gain by using AI, still there are some human factors in it. Where stays human is the choice of which data source to trust and in what order. Will we have the hierarchy or priority of the data sources reconsolidation? It's very hard and the model still they can't do it. So if your credit bureau says that one thing and your property database says another, who wins? So that's for the human beings to make the judgment, to make the call rather than the model. And for property underwriting specifically, the geocoding plus the hazard overlay pieces is really, really transformative. I saw it a few times on the trade shows already. There are quite a lot of tools that are doing brilliant jobs. So they used to take an afternoon of our human beings lookups and our eyes to see what is happening in one location, but now it can happen in a second. So you can see your portfolio concentration rates on the map while submission is still being processed. So the typically benefit or impact here is that manual research per submission drops from hours to under a minute on a standardized risk. So on the complex one, less dramatic, but still quite meaningful. So here we come to the stage 3, which is the risk assessment scoring, which we mentioned that the AI use might be the least gain, might lead to the least gain. So what AI does here? So it suggests the risk band based on the patterns in your historical performance, and it recommends an indicative price or rate adjustment with a confidence level attached. So no, there are different kinds of materials for you to make the decision, but still human beings would be the one who make the decision. So notice what I didn't say here. I didn't say the model will decide because they can't. I didn't say the model can price again because they can't. And I didn't say that the model that binds because they can't, but they suggest or they confirm something. They make some indicative um, choices, options there. So that sentence, the model suggests the underwriter does the decision. So they decide. It's the entire governance philosophy for this stage. So at this stage, still the involvement of human beings are huge. So by saving time from the past two stages, human beings can focus on more careful, more detailed research or investigations on their adjustment or judgment at this stage. And comes to the final stage, which is stage 4, decision support and quoting. This is a closing stage and the one where the generative AI really earns its place, like ChatGPT or Claude. So what the AI does here, they draft the underwriting rationale in plain English. So it doesn't matter what your native language is, it helps you. And it highlights and flags and require exclusions and conditions. It generates the first passcode documentation and broker cover note. It suggests some, for example, sub-limits, deductibles, and warranties by looking at what you've used on comparable risk. And it tracks every recommendations alongside human decisions for your auditing trail. So is what stays human at this stage still quite a lot. So for example, the final wording of the term, the exclusion, bind decisions. So again, the AI, especially the generative AI, are really good at writing reports. And at the beginning, maybe we'll think that they are not so good at writing such certain style of the report because they are trained in different styles. But right now, if you give them certain style of the report, they can actually write accordingly or give them the conditions, they can write brilliant report. But still, human beings can get the final wordings of the term because you know the corresponding party better. And also you can change the terms or the exclusions or the buying decisions. And the negotiation strategy with the brokers are another thing that human beings are going to do because AI still I find that AI can help you to brainstorm with for this thing, but they can't really do, they can't take the action. And human beings are still signing off the authorities and accountability. And more importantly, the quality checking of the AI drafted language before it leaves the building, before it leaves your desk, is more important thing that human beings are doing right now. So the subtle benefit nobody talks about is more like the word I just mentioned here, the audit trail, because your AI is logging every recommendation and every override. You end up with a far richer record of why the decision were made than you ever had with a manual underwriting. So that is gold for the portfolio review, especially for the track record or for going back for the historical record. So it is a kind of gold for regulatory conversation, and it is gold for onboarding new underwriters. So they can see how experienced underwriters reasoned through each cases, through all these different reports. So the impact or the benefit here at this stage will be the code turnaround drops sharply, and your audit documentation is already ready there. It's richer than it's ever have been. And let me just pull some benefit together here because I think maybe some of you are still building a business case for this internally to buy a tool. So there's three headline numbers here. It's not, I can't guarantee the accuracy of all those numbers based on the survey, but it seems that it can save us time, for example, by 60 to 70%. And so throughput per underwriter roughly doubled on their standard work, and the decision consistency improve across the team and the regions if you have different branches around the country or around the world. To be honest about all these numbers with your own stakeholders or your boardroom, the range is quite wide. I've seen teams get maybe 70% time compression, but also we got teams or individuals only get 10% because they don't think that AI tools they purchased are really that useful. And none of these numbers account for the implementation cost and the change of the management effort. We all know that by implementing something, then we need a lot of preparations and etc. So the typical payback are still quite in a very wide range. But the thing is, if we are not doing it now, or if we're not even trying it, then we might not know whether we can still be in this competition in the future. And I'm keeping this slide here, although we only have 30 minutes, because it's quite important, I think. And the regulatory environment is converging quite fast. So the FCA or the PRA here in the UK, the EU's AI Act. So it's quite important to make it explainable and also to notice the quality of the data, also to acknowledge the bias and the fairness of using the model, using the AI. And also, we need to have a very clear roles for the AI, the document who owns the model, who owns the decision, so that we know who's responsible for things. And more importantly, that is also why I'm saying that human beings are not really being replaced, because we still need the monitoring for the model. So if you can't take all these five of those for the governance reality, actually you need to be very careful when you are implementing AI tools in your underwriting process. So here's a quick review, more like some takeaway or what is going to happen in the next 1.5 year, 18 months. So agentic AI is there. So we might have agentic underwriting assistants in the market already. We have seen some product, but not so mature yet. And also we can have the chatbot who can make conversation with the policy admin, which also, of course, is powered by AI. And in the next 18 months, I'm sure that we need to be continuous underwriting rather than point in time. So this is my favorite, especially for the property and commercial lines. So today you underwrite at bind, and then you forget about risk until it's renewable. But in the next 18 months, the model will monitor the risk across the policy period, the weather signals, the satellite images, the ESG scores, the maintenance data. So it actually triggered intervention before the losses actually hit. So that, I think, is the best part of using AI in our system, because that would be difficult with only the human beings at work to do this. So here are some takeaways. I'd say that using AI is for the augmentation rather than replacement for the human underwriters. And we need to start where the data is cleanest. Otherwise, it's rubbish in, rubbish out. We've seen that the stage 1 and 2 are most beneficial from using AI, but it depends on what we feed to the AI model. And thirdly, we need to be careful about the governance from day one, from the start, so that we can actually benefit from using all the different AI tools rather than making even more mistakes by using AI. All right, so this is pretty much I want to introduce today. I didn't make any demonstration because people are using different tools nowadays. But if you are curious about how to use AI in your work, I recommend you to sign up for Maria's course so that we can see more practical cases there. All right, so thank you, everyone. That's over to you if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Sherry. We don't have any questions right now. I don't see
Okay,
them, but of course we can. If you have any questions, please do send them to us. And I would like to thank you so very much, Sherry, for being here and then sharing this very important topic, which is how we're going to use AI in our real estate careers, especially in risk assessment, analysis, and underwriting. I think the quickest we are in making sure that we use all the AI tools that are there in a way that is said that is um, that, according to policies and according to all the all the ethical use of AI, I think the better for all of us. So thank you so much for sharing these insights. And as you
thank
mentioned,
you.
please join our courses and future webinars as well. And thank you so much again, Cherry. It was great seeing you.
Thank you.
Bye
I
bye.
enjoyed it. Bye.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.